different colours and
Yeah.
purple amongst them, and he just called it Bado Deco. And looks like he wasn't wrong. Todd Anderson taking that one down. All right, boys and girls, buckle up. It's time for the semi-finals of Grand Prix Nashville 2012. Welcome along, semi-final time. Josh Utter-Leyton against Todd Anderson is our first semi-final. On the back table, you'll see Kyle Babin up against Reed Duke. There is Todd Anderson. He made it into the top 8 after a controversial ID, it's fair to say, with Daniel Sacchetti, who really should have looked at some standings. And I think Todd was fairly persuasive in suggesting that they would both be on this top 8 stage, and that turned out to be only true for one of them. Big tip. When you're at home, someone says to you, you know what, I think you're in. Do the math.
His opponent, of course, is Josh Utter-Leyton, part of Team Channel Fireball. Josh is sporting a black-white humans deck against Todd Anderson's black-green-white tokens deck, aggressive deck.
Green-white, yeah. I mean, there's no... The black is minimal.
Yeah, I saw him demolish Shuhei's mill deck. Shuhei decided to mill Todd, and Todd flipped over Lingering Souls Travel Preparations.
Really?
In the first game, yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's pretty harsh.
So, things have gotten started here. And looks like a turn 2 Silver Chase Fox for Todd Anderson.
That's kind of good for him because Josh is certain to make something on turn 2.
A Silver Chase Fox of his own.
Yeah, I mean, he has 8 2-drops. So, almost unimaginable that there would not be something on board there.
They'll go ahead and trade them, and Todd will get the Morbid of his Ulvenwald Bears.
Just one. Just the bear.
Bear.
Yes. Rest of the family back at home. Watching GG's live, I would imagine.
Of course. No other way.
Voice of the Spirit. Next time. For Josh.
It's likely that Todd's going to get quite a few damage in here before Josh has something to say about it. But I'm curious as to see what Todd's next play is, how aggressive it will be, how it might deal with Voiceless Spirit. So Ulvenwald Bears will get in for 4 damage, dropping Josh to 16. And
there goes Lingering Souls.
It's like we see it every weekend. Lingering Souls
dominating. Doesn't matter what the format is.
Yeah, the card is quite powerful.
So what do you reckon when we get to Pro Tour Anderson Restored in May? Do you think some people might try and do something with Lingering Souls?
I mean, that Pro Tour is block, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Lingering Souls is one of the most powerful cards in this block.
So,
in both limited and constructed.
Oh, yeah.
Todd does not have access to a black mana to flash back Lingering Souls quite yet. And I'm sure Josh has something to say about how Todd has started this game. There you get a good look at Josh as he goes ahead and casts another Silver Chase Fox and casts Victim of Night on the Ulvenwald Bears. So now, Josh's Voiceless Spirit currently outclasses the Spirit tokens of Todd Anderson. Unless Todd has something like a Travel Preparation, the first strike from the Voiceless Spirit.
What he has is an Abbey Griffin.
That 2/2 is not going to cut it. The Voiceless Spirit is really keeping Todd's flyers at bay.
It's interesting, though, that Josh's deck is designed to be very aggressive, and we're already heading towards a mid-game with 16 to 20 or 16 to 18, the life tokens. Interestingly, that third swamp coming down is potentially a big deal if the game goes properly late, because Josh is basically a white deck with a certain Micaeus the Unhallowed. So,
Crushing Vines is crushing to the Voiceless Spirit of Josh Utter-Leyton. That's going to allow Todd to get in for quite a few damage in the next couple turns. For this turn, dropping Josh to 12.
Evolving Wilds for Todd, which will allow him to go find Swamp for flashback on Lingering Souls.
To only add more power in the air for Todd Anderson. It doesn't look as though Josh has any big drops. Burden of Guilt will take care of the Abbey Griffin for a short while, but there's no other creature for him, allowing Todd to flash back Lingering Souls in the next turn and add 2 more power of flyers, deal another 2, and likely 4 the next turn. So Todd sacrificing his Evolving Wilds to go get that swamp he needs for Lingering Souls. And let's see what he draws for his turn. Looks like a Plains, so Todd has a couple of decisions to make. First, the Abbey Griffin's going to get tapped down. He's going to attack in for 2, dropping Josh to 10.
Then flashback.
2 more 1/1 Flying Spirit tokens for Todd.
And there's more. Elder Cathar.
Elder Cathar, somewhat important now because it allows Todd to trade with the Silver Chase Fox of Josh Utter-Leyton and put a +1/+1 counter on one of the Spirit tokens. Todd really needs some big drop here, but all he seems to be drawing are more lands. Todd clearly in the driver's seat here. With 4 power of flyers, the 2/2 on the ground, he's going to attack in with all his creatures.
Block and trade, but lots of damage coming across. Josh in trouble.
More next turn thanks to the +1/+1 counter from Elder Cathar. Ooh.
Kessig Recluse.
An onslaught of creatures coming from Todd's deck.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the creatures have come from Lingering Souls, but just nothing from Josh.
Pass the turn. Die shortly.
Yeah, unless Josh has a fog effect, I can't see him winning.
Yep, scoop. 1-0 Todd Anderson in double quick time.
This is Todd Anderson's second Grand Prix top 8.
I have a feeling.
I remember he top 8'd Grand Prix Houston back in 2010, I think?
2010, yep. He's also had some other good finishes. It is his second GP top 8. He was 17th, just fell outside top 16 at Pro Tour Honolulu this year. And he was also 3rd at US Nationals in 2009.
Of course, defeating Brad Nelson in the top 4?
I believe that's right, yeah, because the team that year was Adam Yurchik and Todd Anderson, and the national champion was Charles Gimby.
Yeah.
That did not end well for Team USA at Rome that year.
Unfortunately.
It was some issue over procedure led to a team DQ.
Luckily for Charles Gindy this weekend, he qualified for Pro Tour Avicen Restored via Magic Online PTQ.
Right.
So we'll be seeing more of him. Josh Utter-Leyton, of course, has had his own success at the national championship level.
He is a national champion, of course, and also 2 Pro Tour top 8s to his name. Pro Tour San Juan, 2010. He made it to the quarterfinals there. And then, memorably, it always takes 2 to tango in the big games. We saw at Pro Tour Philadelphia last year, he finished 2nd to Samuel Estrati, but before he could lose to Estrati, he had to beat Sam Black. And that was a monster game. That was just so much fun to watch.
And true nail-biter.
Oh, wasn't it just? And the thing is, what was so great about that game from a viewer perspective is that we all knew what Sam didn't, was that for a couple of turns there, Josh was utterly vulnerable because of what was in hand. He didn't have, we called it counter zoo, and he didn't have any disruption. He was just kind of playing guys and punching things into the red zone and kind of hoping for the best. And Sam ultimately just couldn't quite find what he needed to seal the deal. So, let's see as we head into Game 2 with Todd Anderson, 1 to the good.
And of course, Reed Duke and Kyle Babin battling it out on the other table.
Mm-hmm. So, have you ever been in the 37-point saloon, as it were, where you're sitting and you're paired against someone, and you don't know whether you're going to make it in or not, and you have to sort of go through the discussion of whether to intentionally draw or not?
Yeah, for sure. I've been in that situation quite a few times, and since I've been playing for quite a while, I've gotten good at doing the math.
Sure.
I remember a really old friend of mine teaching me how to do the math at the end of the event, and I always pride myself on making sure that I can make the right decision. It's something really important.
It's so difficult, though, isn't it? Because, you know, I don't want to be harsh towards Sacchetti at all, because you've worked so hard to get so close, and, you know, inevitably, you want the answer to be, I can ID. That's what you want to hear someone say. So if someone says to you, you know, we can ID, you can certainly think, oh, that's good, great, marvellous. You know, and it turned out that wasn't the way it worked out.
It's really tough in these bigger events like Grand Prix and Pro Tours, because there's so much going on. There's so many unintentional draws. It's not like a Pro Tour qualifier where it's more cut and dry.
It's also that you talk about the head judge will always say in his opening remarks to players at a Grand Prix, say, listen, if there's any discussion over what should happen, call a judge, because there's only one person in any given match who's out for your best interest, and that's you, and however lovely your opponent is, the person they care most about is them. So you should always call the judge when there's a discussion. Of course, you can't call the judge to say, should I ID? So you are or you're not. And it's a tricky one. But do the math. And, you know, even if you want it to be true, you want to really be careful when people offer you the hand. Think about it.
So play here has started. Josh has led with an Avacinian Priest. Todd searched up a land with his Caravan Vigil. I didn't quite get to see what land was it. Did you see it? Probably likely a swamp, if I had to guess.
Well, it looks like, yes, he's got planes already by the looks of things. Certainly he's coloured up quite happily.
I believe the swamp's only in his deck to flashback Lingering Souls.
Yeah, I don't think there are any black cards as such. So Avacinian Priests will do something Avacinian Priests don't often do, but are perfectly allowed to do within the rules of the game. Turn sideways to inflict damage on the opponent.
Nibelus of the Mist comes down for Josh. It's interesting. Throughout the weekend, Nibelus of the Mist has an ability when it comes into play, but I haven't seen it be useful
we've
at
seen
all.
So many of them, haven't we? All weekend long. Villagers of Eswell now for Todd. No news as yet of the back table. Reed Duke against Carl Babin. Black Red Vampires against Reed's Blue Red. And as we say that, our wish is Rashad Miller's command. Reed Duke leads by 1-0. So Reed Duke 1 game away from the final. Todd Anderson 1 game away from the final.
And a Skursdag Flare for Josh Utter-Leyton.
Now, Ralph Levy was saying that that's a really big deal because Todd has very few ways to deal with the Flare.
And Josh has quite a few humans in his deck.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
chock full of humans.
So potentially there's going to be a lot of gunning down in Todd's future. So see if we can take a look. I believe there's a blazing torch.
Yes.
Todd.
And let's see. I don't think
hunt
much
the alternatives, and I'm not sure there are many. Maybe even any.
No, unless he can somehow give it flying and destroy it with crushing vines.
Okay. That's kind of convoluted.
Got to do what you have to do in
Absolutely.
some cases.
Yeah.
So, a Thraben Sentry for Todd. But in this game, Josh's Flyer is the one's controlling it. He has that Nibelus of the Mist right now, picking away at Todd's life total.
It says Unruly Mob. Josh?
Perhaps that Unruly Mob will get quite unruly later in the game. Skursdag Flare can put a lot of +1/+1 counters on it.
Yes. There's a little synergy there, it's fair to say.
Although, at this point in the game, the creature that Josh is most likely to sacrifice would be the Unruly Mob. He doesn't want to sacrifice either the Skursdag Flare or the Avacinian Priest.
Sure.
But then again, Todd doesn't really have any creatures that Josh really needs to deal with at this point.
Nope. So Todd's going to send in the team. Josh will take some damage.
No real reason for him to trade here. And of course, both of Todd's creatures are humans, so Avacinian Priest doesn't do very much.
So there's Galvanic Juggernaut for Todd. And it instantly gets tapped down because that's something the Abyssinian priest is quite happy to object to on theological grounds.
Yeah. It's actually quite telling here that Todd played the Galvanic Juggernaut knowing that the Abyssinian priest is still in play. Knowing that it's going to get tapped down and will be tapped for the foreseeable future.
So,
Josh here considering his options. For sure he's going to get in for 2 with Nibelus of the Mist.
3 mana. He's going to add to his board with Voice of the Spirit.
So again, flyers are really driving this game. Evasion between these 2 sort of base white decks is really, really important. Let's see if Todd has an answer to these flyers.
Well, it's time to think about going on the road again. With some travel preparations.
Adding a +1/+1 counter to both Villagers of Estwald and Thraben Sentry.
And on the action replay.
Yep, adding a second +1/+1 counter to both creatures. This makes it a little tougher for Josh to deal with Todd's creatures.
Yep.
For a while they were trading 4 damage for 4 damage, but now it's 8 damage coming at Josh. And if that Thraben Sentry ever transforms, you get a 7/6 Trampler. It's going to be really tough to deal with.
Yeah.
Josh has to start thinking about using that Screwstag Flare here.
The thing is, I mean, that's no disaster because once he does start doing that, things, skillful lunge, that's nice. 2/1 first strike becomes 4/1 first strike. Not first strike, I don't think.
But that's enough to take out the Thraben Sentry. Josh is still going to take 4 points of damage and go down to 10. Galvanic Juggernaut, of course, is going to untap, but I can't imagine it's going to stay untapped for long, thanks to the Abyssinian Priest.
Looks like Josh untaps. So, Abyssinian Priest will be ready to get the Juggernaut on the next go-round.
It's still interesting to see that we haven't seen a creature out of Josh's deck over 3 mana.
I think he has very, very few.
Yeah, I know he's got the Micaeus the Unhallowed.
Yeah.
But beyond that, they're very small creatures.
How hardly counts as a creature above 3 mana? It's just this gigantic thing.
Well, Slayer of the Wicked here is a creature that costs more than 3 mana, and very important by destroying Villagers of Estwald.
Yeah.
Now Josh has a commanding board presence.
Doesn't he just?
And still has the mana to tap down the Galvanic Juggernaut before it can attack.
Yeah, you would have had to feel we're well on the way to game 3 here.
Although, if Todd has a Lingering Soul, that might be...
Yep, that shifts things around.
Game-changing.
So, 3 cards in hand for Anderson right now. He's drawn a Swamp, the other Swamp from his deck.
Is that a Creeping Renaissance that Todd boarded in? It's an interesting card to board in. It looks that way. But looks like that won't be enough, and Josh takes the second game here to drive the match to a third game.
Yep, 1-1.
There we get a good look at Josh Utter-Leyton, former U.S. national champion.
And part of the quartet from Channel 5 who made the top 8 of Worlds in San Francisco on virtually home turf. San Jose is their spiritual home, if you will. But just down the road, San Francisco Worlds last year. So Conley Woods, Josh Utter-Leyton, Louis Scott Vargas,
Paulo Vitor Dalma.
And of course, Owen Turtenwald eventually becoming Player of the Year as a result of that event.
On the other side of things, of course, Japan shows that it can come back to the Pro Tour. There's a little resurgence with Japan winning the individual title in the form of Junya Ianaga.
Yep.
And winning the team title.
And it looks like the winner of this has a final opponent ready and waiting. Reed Duke. Number of times he's lost this weekend? None.
0 times.
I believe that is the case. pretty sure that's right. Didn't he go? He certainly got to 12-0. Then he drafted, and he went 39. Then he went 40. Then he went 41. Yeah, he's ID'd twice.
Yep.
And just won everything.
Had an amazing weekend so far.
And now he has won his semi-final over Kyle Babin, 2-0.
A heartbreak story for Kyle Babin, but really, a Cinderella story.
But also, he lost at the right time, which is the semi-final.
Yeah.
Don't lose in the quarter-final, lose in the semi-final, and bathe your wounds by going, I appear to have made the Pro Tour. Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you very much.
I think he's had like 13 or 14 wins in a row. He started the tournament 0-1.
Yeah.
No buys.
No buys. That's just crazy. Thing was, I talked to him, he said he thought he had a very good deck yesterday. Very miserable at 0-1. He was like, and it's like an 8-hour drive, I think, from home for him, so it's not quite local. It's within range for North America, but, an investment. And he said, I felt pretty miserable at 0-1, but fought back and the deck was really good, and then obviously a great run today, and it comes to an end in the semi-finals at the hands of Blue Red and Reed Duke here in his third Grand Prix top 8 in 22 appearances, twice a GP top 8 man, no closer than third in Providence, so this is his personal best. He's in the final, and one of these two pros, or erstwhile pros, will be in the mix facing him in just a few minutes after Todd Anderson and Josh Utter-Leyton duke it out in the third game of 3.
So I'm curious, I saw the Creeping Renaissance at the end of the game for Todd. I wonder if he made any other interesting changes to his deck in between sideboard. Creeping Renaissance is sort of a slow card. It's more of a sealed geared card. People play it more in sealed. You don't see it very often in draft, but
return all cards of the chosen type from your graveyard to your hand once you choose a permanent type. You can do it again for 7, but the main cost is 5, so like you say, it's sluggish.
Yeah,
perhaps would do as a word.
But maybe it makes sense in Todd's deck. I'm not sure if he had a chance to look at Josh's list, but if he knew that Josh had only low drops and small creatures, and he wanted more of a late game presence, maybe Creeping Renaissance is what he needs.
So we gear up. No mulligans, please, on either side. Keep your 7 cards. Be happy with them. Have a fair game. 1,027 players kicked off. Down to 3. They're all quite good.
Yeah.
2 of them are really, really, really good.
One of them will be very, very, very good.
Today?
Yeah. An hour's time. One of them will be a Grand Prix champion, a title that none of them have.
That's right. So it looks to me like Todd certainly has all the mana he needs.
And a Lingering Souls.
Oh,
lingering in his hand.
Oh, really? Well, that's very good, and he's drawn into Silver Chase Fox. Looks like he's got. Looks like he's also got Blazing Torch in that opening hand, which means Skursdag Flare is potentially. He's drawn his answer ahead of time for that. Silver Chase Fox potentially going to trade with Silver Chase Fox? No. Josh refuses that offer.
It's interesting to see that in the first game, Josh took that trade on the second turn, but he's realized maybe something's different in this game. Maybe his hand's different. That trade isn't what he wants.
Which is a best wild. Todd is coming out pretty fast here. If you say he's got Lingering Souls as well, this is a very strong start for Todd. Josh Utter-Leyton looking to apply the brakes somewhat with Voice of the Spirit. That's
not going to be able to deal with the Villager's Vestwald, thanks to its 3 toughness.
Todd lays land number 4. Puts his hand into his lap. Puts his 4 cards looking at. There's a Crushing Vines there.
I think Crushing Vines was a really defining card in the last game where... I suppose the first game, where he was able to get rid of one of Josh's flyers. It's one of those cards that you're not always sure you were going to play when you draft it. It might stay in your sideboard, but in some cases you want to start it, especially if your deck is weak to flyers like Todd's is.
Yeah. So Todd will send 4 power into the red zone. Again, this is a sort of classic example where being on the play is such a big deal, because for the last 2 turns you've seen Josh Utter-Leyton's mana tapped and all of Todd's untapped as the red zone interactions occur, and that's such a huge advantage to a play with potential trickery.
So it looks like Todd's going to go ahead and cast Hunger of the Howlpack to save his Silver Chase Fox.
You see, nothing Josh can do about that because he's tapped out, and Todd will now Lingering Souls as well. This is very one-way traffic here right now.
Yeah.
Josh Utter-Leyton, you need to do something good soon. Draws on land, I believe. Maybe not.
It wasn't land. I also see a Micaeus Hallowed in his hand. Whether or not he'll be able to get to 6 mana in order to cast it is another question, thanks to the aggressive creature start that Todd Anderson has.
Seems unlikely. I wonder who Reed Duke would rather be playing in the final, whether there's a... I mean, he knows that Todd is missing, as Raph explained to us, that Todd is missing some useful cards from Green White because there was pressure on it around the table. But
I mean, one of the faults that I saw with Reed Duke's deck is he's sort of light on removal.
Yeah.
But against both of these decks, it's not necessarily necessary that he needs too much removal if he can out-aggro one of his opponents.
But then both of them have been pretty swift in getting into action. Hollowhenge Spirit comes down for Josh.
Interesting that he plays that main phase, not getting all the value he could against it. He's doing that so that Village of Aswald doesn't flip.
Sure. Gets hit by Crushing Lines. Todd comes piling in. Blazing Torch as well. Oh, I think we are very close to a final, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
I mean, Todd's representing 9 damage here. 7 from his creatures, 2 from the Blazing Torch. Of course, Josh can block with his Silver Chase Fox, but it won't be able to trade with any of Todd's creatures, the 2/3 Villagers of Astwald or the 3/3 Silver Chase Fox. Another Silver Chase Fox for Todd, or for Josh.
They shouldn't have one-syllable names. Back we go to Todd, who is potentially not far away from final rendezvous with Reed Duke.
Even if Josh has Victim of Night here or some other removal spell for that 3/3 Silver Chase Fox, he's still going to pile in and get dealt a bunch of damage. So likely the block here is to double block the Villagers of Astwald with the 2 Silver Chase Foxes, or block the 2 Silver Chase Foxes onto the 1 Silver Chase Fox. But he's got to be careful. There's that Lingering Souls in the graveyard. Todd's really threatening. Quite a bit of damage. Josh really needs something else to come back into this game. So Todd, considering his possible attacks, whether or not he wants to attack with everybody, it doesn't seem like there's any problem with him attacking with everybody. It's not as if Josh is threatening a lethal backswing.
Sure.
But he just wants to be careful about which creatures he wants to trade off and planning the rest of his turns in this game.
Little Brains Trust of Raphael Levy, Ellie Pichon, Ben Sek, and Reed Duke over by the feature match area, waiting to find out who will be playing Reed in the final.
So Todd chooses to get in only with the 2 Spirit tokens. And looks like he'll go ahead and flash back Lingering Souls.
Yes. Just, I've got the ground pretty much locked up. Let's take it to the air. I only need to get you to 2. You're already down to 7. I'll re-equip over here. Desperate times for Josh Utter-Leyton.
Yeah. He does have a Moment of Heroism in his hand, which might allow him to gain some extra life, deal with another creature, but
it's certainly not going to be decisive. It's going to be a gain a bit.
And also,
turn, bit of time.
Also, I mean, he doesn't have any flyers right now, so the 4 1/1 Spirit tokens from Todd, thanks to Lingering Souls, is really what he needs to worry about.
Lingering Souls for the win again? Really?
Cloistered Youth for Josh. It doesn't seem likely that he'll transform that. He's already short on life at 7 right now. There's no reason for him to deal 1 to himself each turn. And Josh passes the turn after the Cloistered Youth. Todd really couldn't untap any more quickly.
No. 1, 2, 3, 4 through the air. Josh will go to 3.
An effective 1 life thanks to the Blazing Torch. And will Todd add something else to the board?
He will.
Mausoleum Guard for Todd.
Moments away.
I'm not sure Macias, even if Josh were able to cast it here, would do it for him. It's too little, too late.
I think we're done. Todd looks and looks.
Josh trying to figure out if there's any possible way for him to win this game. Looking through the math, is there any way that perhaps Todd could make a mistake and he could live for another turn? Land Heavy Matic.
Pass with 3 mana up.
The real problem here is, of course, the Blazing Torch.
Smash. Game.
And
Todd Anderson will advance to the final.
Where he'll face Reed Duke,
who has not lost all weekend.
Be quite the final. A good tournament for Josh Utter-Leyton, good showing, but in the end, the finals between Todd Anderson and Reed Duke is what we're going to see.